Tailgate. And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fernelli. That's Bud Elliott. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe, smash that like, and come and join us in the chat, a.k.a. the Cover 3 Tailgate. Oh, boy. A little bit later than we normally are because, remarkably, a game that had 22 total points didn't end until about 3 hours and 40 minutes of game time had passed. You don't always have that. Final score, Florida State 16, Louisville 6. The Seminoles finish 13-0. That is just one of many results that we are about to get to here in this. And look, the Cover 3 Tailgate is rocking. The college football world is rocking. Because when I held up that Iowa Hawkeyes pad with 16 different scenarios, and I told you all about how I'd gamed them all out, we've got the one. We've got the one with the most chaos, the most controversy, the most debate. And I don't know if I'm happy or if I'm just embracing it, because here's what I think needs to happen. I think we need to spend a little bit of time having the conversation that everybody's having, but then we also need to talk football. Is that good? Like, I watched a ton of football today. I would love to talk about Chuck Martin. I would love to talk about, what's that? Well, Bud, what was the final total? Was it 234 yards and 5 touchdowns for Kamani Vidal? Like, I mean, there was some amazing performances. I mean, as like Avion Smith, like when you can win a MAC title going just 6 for 16 throwing the ball, it's a great stuff. But I think that we need to start with the conversation, especially because the Florida State game just went final. So we have Michigan 13-0, 1 seed. Right?
Maybe 2.
Washington maybe 1 seed?
Mm-hmm. There's an argument to be made that Washington has a better overall resume
than Michigan based on strength of schedule, number of ranked wins. That's a good debate. Texas 3?
I think so.
Ahead of Florida State or Florida State 3?
Possibly. I'm not sure about the seeds. I think I know who the 4 teams will be, though.
But
I don't know. Like, I think probably Washington won, but I don't know if they'll do it. Like that. Normally, I think the committee sticks to kind of a defined ranking, rubric for the last one. I think they make up all this stuff for TV throughout the season, but for the last one, it's pretty predictable. But this is also the last 4-team playoff. And we also have like entire conferences going away. And we have winners of conferences who will no longer be in those conferences. So I don't know what the politicking is going to look like tonight and tomorrow morning in that room. Like, I really don't know what's going to happen here. It's going to be interesting. Like Tom was talking before the show, either the games will matter or they won't. Mm-hmm. We'll find out.
And if the games matter, if you're trying to sell that as something that truly means something in the sport, and your playoff is to determine the national champion, then the 4 teams will be Michigan, Washington, Florida State, and Texas in some order, because 3 of them are undefeated, and Texas beat Alabama, which beat Georgia. So it's pretty cut and dried. But I can't sit here and pretend I know what the people in that room are going to do. Anything is possible. We'll see.
In 2012, when the BCS group of managers got together and agreed upon the formation of the college football playoff, the 4-team format, that is now in its 10th season, they dictated that championships won, strength of schedule, head-to-head results, and results against similar opponents are the 4 tenets of how you break ties between comparable teams.
Mm-hmm.
If Texas and Alabama have championships that Georgia does not, and Texas beat Alabama and Alabama beat Georgia, then we have a set that has to go Texas, Alabama, Georgia. Right?
Yeah, Georgia's not in this discussion, right? Are we? Maybe my criteria, or I'm misunderstanding what the committee's saying. Like, nobody's really considering Georgia in this, right?
Not after Florida State won tonight. I don't think
Correct.
Georgia has a prayer.
Yeah, no.
But I mean, that is
Texas has the best win of the season, not Alabama.
Yeah, like Texas
Beating the SEC champion by double digits in their own
on
house
the road
is
And
better
also-
than a field goal win. Yeah, sorry.
That win looks even better after Alabama beats Georgia. Like, that win improves even more. So yeah, it's the best win of the season. Although it would be hilarious if the committee decides that Alabama beating Georgia is a better win than Texas beating Alabama.
Dude, it's going to be interesting.
what do you think?
What do I think would happen, or what do I think they're going to choose?
Yeah.
Go
Do you
here.
really think the SEC is going to be left out of the college
Yes.
football playoff in the 2023 season?
Yes.
Yeah.
I do. And I mean, here's just you're going to hear a lot of arguing about how Georgia would beat the 4 teams in there and Alabama would beat the 4 teams in there. And to be clear, I think Alabama and Georgia would beat Florida State. I think Alabama and Georgia would beat Michigan. I think Alabama and Georgia could beat Washington. I think Alabama could beat Texas, but didn't. But the point is, what I think will happen has no bearing or should have any bearing, or what anybody thinks would happen should have any impact on who gets chosen, because what's supposed to matter is what has happened. And what has happened is 3 teams finished undefeated and won their conference, and Texas went 1 loss, won its conference, and beat another one of the conference champions. So we'll see. And the SEC will get left out, but now SEC fans get to experience what it's been like to be a fan of any other team in any other conference for the entirety of the BCS and the college football playoff, going to bed the night before, not sure you're going to get in. It's not as fun when the rabbit's got the gun.
Well, the SEC could have taken care of business in the non-conference, right? And not ducked teams and not lost out-of-conference games that it normally wins. Like, you could tell me the SEC is the best league this year. I don't really think that is incorrect.
It's not.
But it's not the best league by a mile.
Yeah.
Right? It's much closer to the other leagues than normal. Last year ain't this year, right? Last year, Georgia had big-time defensive linemen on the middle of that defense. Guess what? They play for the Eagles now. I don't really care that Georgia won the title last year, right? What did you do this year? How did your league stack up this year? It's this year's title. We're not playing for the title of the decade.
So I'm not saying anything that wasn't said on very big stages. But since this is the Cover 3 podcast, and since I did say it all day, even before all these other posers who are obviously watching CBS Sports HQ said it, my thought Friday night is that this is exactly why your "what would the spread be" argument is totally in the grave right now. Because Washington was a 9.5-point underdog, and they were up 10-0. They were up, 17-3, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Or 21. Yeah, they won.
It was 20-3. Yeah, they were up 20-3 at one point.
They were up 20-3 at one point, and they won. And they won the Pac-12 championship. Alabama was an underdog of nearly a touchdown. Things moved down. I think it was 5.5 by the time we actually closed. But that is an underdog. In fact, this conference championship weekend had more underdog success than we have seen in most conference championship weekends. So miss me with the idea that just because a power rating or Vegas says that a team that is going to be left out of the college football playoff when they announce it on Sunday morning, just because they would be favored on a neutral field in the Rose Bowl or the Sugar Bowl against a team that got in, does not matter. And so I hear Kirby Smart when he's like, when Bill Hancock, the executive director, like everybody's invoking the name of Bill Hancock just because he's the executive director, outgoing executive director, by the way, invoking his name as though like his word is gospel. I heard our friend Josh Pate. He was, because Josh did a good job, and classic Josh, like he did a good job of both like presenting every side of the argument within the context of explaining it. And he said, if we are to take this as gospel, then this. I might have an issue with it, but this. I don't think we take Bill Hancock's word as gospel because he's not on the freaking committee. Yeah. All right? So, look, the games, this has been said everywhere. The games have to matter. Right? Like,
do they? I don't know. Like, watching the broadcast tonight, it seems like they don't matter.
Washington beat Oregon as a 9.5-point underdog. Alabama beat Georgia as an underdog. Like, do not trot out these spread. Like, shoot, Florida State was only a 1.5-point favorite. They won that game by 10. Mm-hmm. So, like, these power ratings and these potential like Vegas point spreads should not determine how we decide the national championship. There have been so many years in college football's history where the like big air quotes in our tiny little box here with my hotel room set up, best team isn't in the like BCS national championship. And why are they not there? Because you corked it. Because you messed up. Because you didn't win every single one of your games. And if you are a team that wins every single one of your games, like Michigan did, like Washington did, like Florida State did, then you get a shot at the national championship.
And I mean, the other thing too, like, This year, the SEC didn't do as well in non-conference. Had the SEC done its typical job in non-conference this year and just beat the hell out of everybody like it normally does, Alabama's probably in the top 4. But they didn't this year. And I feel like a lot of SEC fans and SEC media types just aren't used to being in this position. And they're kind of just like, oh, there's no way they could leave us out. Like even Saban said, you can't leave the SEC out of the playoff. Why not? There is no rule within the selection committee that says the SEC is guaranteed an automatic berth. The SEC champion gets a spot in the tournament. There's nothing there that says it has to happen. The SEC can be left out of the playoff, just like the Pac-12 has been left out, like the Big 12 has been left out, the Big 10 and the ACC. You're no different than anybody else. You've just been better than everybody else.
Except for this year. Mm-hmm. I saw Alabama's AD grumbling about maybe we won't schedule these non-conference games. You know who's really happy they scheduled a non-conference game? Texas.
Yeah.
Because they won that non-conference game. I bet you Texas is damn thrilled that they played Alabama and they whipped them in their house. Like, look, I completely get it as far as we think the networks run the sport. Like, does Florida State look as good now as they did with Jordan Travis? Clearly not. Did their offense look any worse tonight than Michigan's looked? Not really.
Slightly, but not much.
I mean, yeah, I honestly, Michigan scored on a 9-yard drive after a fumble and a punt return to the 2.
Yeah, they're 2 touchdown drives for 11 total yards.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not really 100% sure FSU is going to be in, right? I don't know what they'll do. Precedent, does it matter if this whole thing is going away, if all the conferences are blown up? I really don't know what they'll do. Like, they may just throw precedent of taking the most deserving teams, which is what they do every year, basically. They may just throw it out the window. What might help FSU here is it was their third stringer, right? And you get to say, hey, a lot of guys on that defense are going to be drafted, right? You get a month for Keon Coleman to heal up, right? You get Bell to heal up. Like, he was like basically a non-factor tonight. So you get your backup in, not your third stringer. That's, I think, an argument that will probably be presented there within the committee. We'll see. Like, to Tom's point, though, if we just went chalk, if we just went power ratings, Ohio State doesn't beat Miami in the Fiesta Bowl, right? Michigan plays Georgia last year for the national title. Oh, wait, no, we let TCU in, which is something everybody wants to point to as such an egregious mistake. Guys, TCU won the first round game. Like, we don't really – we can predict this sport decently, not perfectly. That's kind of what makes it fun.
Yes.
I will say there is one precedent they could set if they leave Florida State out. And that is you can never claim again that the games matter if you're going to throw out a 13-0 conference champion's entire season. Because, again, I understand Florida State does not look as good as it did earlier in the year. But the fact it was still able to win the last 2 games of the season, including its ACC championship game, with a third-string quarterback doesn't mean they suck. It's typically a sign that they're good.
Like they had to put a knee brace on him.
In the past, when we've seen Ohio State win with backup quarterbacks, or Alabama benches Jalen for Tua, or the other way around, it's a sign of how great they are. But for some reason now, when the SEC is staring at the abyss of not being in the playoff, it's a sign of how bad you are if you need your backup quarterback to win a game. It's just it's incredible the kind of loops and double standards we put on different teams based on their conference.
Anything else? Because I mean, I was just about to jump into it. I mean, obviously we just came off of it. Like I've got flowers for Tatum Bethune. I've got flowers for Braden Fisk. I've got flowers for Jared Verse. Like the dudes that were just carrying that Florida State and Florida State's playoff hopes. You want to go ahead and get into that, or anything else on the because here's the deal. We're going to be back with you at 12:15 p.m. Eastern time. They are the show to announce the college football playoff matchups. It's going to be at noon Eastern time. We are going to be live at youtube.com/cover3 at 12:15 p.m. Eastern time, breaking down those matchups, analyzing the decisions. So we're going to have some time to do that. Anything else on just sort of the general conundrum that we have right now before we get into the actual games?
Do you think they care if the games matter?
We'll find out. I mean, and
because with going to the 12-team playoff, we'll have more auto bids with conference champions, right? So you may not have this situation. Like the 4-team, I don't want to get into it's like, was it the right number? Was it the wrong? My argument was always like, this type of scenario could happen, and it's not a good thing for the sport. Like 4, I'm fine with going back to 2. I just thought 4 was a uniquely poor number for the construct of the sport.
Oh yeah, you were in that since like SB Nation, right? Like since
I'm like 2 is fine, 6 is fine, 8 is fine, 12 is fine. 4 is uniquely bad for reasons that we don't need to get into tonight. Do they care? Like they may not care if the games matter, right? It's a TV product and they rig it. Okay, I if you tell me that, I buy it. We'll see.
It might take a little bit of time for us to get all the way back to Friday night, which seems like a year ago to me. But I doubted Washington at like every step. They played 7 straight 1-score games, but they won 7 straight 1-score games. They're entering this college football playoff. And you know what? We'll see what the matchup is. I might be a doubter again, but they deserve a shot at the national championship. And like the Washington argument, the Florida State argument, like this is why college football is so unique, why the drama of every single Saturday has so many people investing in us, right? Like we appreciate all of the, you mentioned everyone sharing their Spotify Wrapped, and we're getting a lot of like love, and we really do like it. It is overwhelming to like actually see the people that have enjoyed the Cover 3 podcast during this season. And we hope that we're going to continue to deliver this product for you. But the reason why everyone's invested is because it's special, because the games matter. Because showing up on a Saturday night and listening to an instant reaction show is not just like a ho-hum thing, because every single game carries some significance for the teams that are trying to be. Maybe you're competing for a national championship. Maybe you're trying to get to a bowl. Maybe you're trying to beat your rival. Like there's so many different levels of what you could go for that it casts a wide net and people care. Games have to matter, man. Have to. It's like key to the soul of the sport.
It's been the foundation of my concern about the playoff from the very start.
So we'll see. All right. Now to get to something that we are really, I'll be cocky about this. We're really, really good at. It's called breaking down the games on Saturday. So coming up on the other side, some of our biggest takeaways from all the conference championship Saturday. Next.
You a lawman or an outlaw?
Bit of both, I reckon. Around these parts, we might be men. They're just killers.
You up for the task? I wouldn't be sitting here in my Sunday best if I wasn't. I'm warning you, your wicked days are done.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast, and we start to turn our attention. Oh, actually, before we do that, we got a lot of people who are tuned in with us live, and we understand why. It's been an extremely eventful 24 to 36 hours in college football. If you are new here, do us a favor. Hit that subscribe, hit that like. If you do subscribe, you get to join us in the Cover 3 tailgate. We appreciate everybody that does so. If you're listening to this later, thank you as always for your commitment to the Cover 3 podcast. So, bud, let's start with what just happened. Have you caught your breath yet?
I mean, when you're running out a third string quarterback who then gets hurt, like basically every single snap matters a whole lot, right? It was in some ways like watching a Big Ten West game, or like watching Bama LSU from 2011, where
the 9-6 game
would score. Depends on if you're, what conference it is, if we think it's good football or not. It was really not.
Whoa! Don't do that. No, hold on.
I'm just messing with you.
Yeah, I know you're messing, but there were not that many NFL players on the field tonight. There were a lot of NFL players, but not as many NFL players.
That 9-6 Bama LSU game is legit one of my favorite football games of all time.
That was insane.
Yes.
That was probably the best defensive effort I've seen from a Florida State team since September of 2005, when they had no offense. It was the Labor Day opener against Miami, and they ended up having was it Brock Berlin they sacked 12 times in that game, and then Miami ends up missing the field goal. FSU wins 10-7.
All those missed field goals kind of blend together for me, so I can't remember who the quarterback was.
This was a Miami miss because the guy muffs the he muffs the snap, if I recall.
If I remember, that 05 Miami team also had multiple quarterbacks. If it was Berlin, I'd believe it. But yeah, sure.
I mean, that was just an insane defensive effort. Like Louisville, we talked, pregame. Pretty good offensive team for most of the year. Not an amazing offensive team, but a team that you can generally bank on to score. They put 30-something on Kentucky and lost on a kickoff return last week. You held them to 6 points, under 200 yards, 14 tackles for loss, 7 sacks. I mean, sticky coverage. I was shocked that Florida State covered as well as they did. And they basically knew they had to be perfect. And they weren't like perfect, but they were about as close to perfect as you're going to see from a college defense. That was really impressive.
Yeah, I tweeted it during the game because it was because of the playoff conversation and because of the Jordan Travis injury. Like, all the focus in this game was like, oh my God, Florida State doesn't look good enough to be in the playoff. They should be left out. And I'm sitting there watching the game like, yeah, the offense does not look good. But at the same time, I'm sitting there thinking, Louisville's got its starting quarterback in. Louisville's got a whole lot of its starters in on the offensive side. It's got a great head coach in Jeff Brom, somebody who we talked about all week is excellent at like scheming things up, especially against a defense that's going to play as much man coverage as Florida State did. And I was like, this defense is playing it with its hair on fire. Like, it was a tremendous performance from the Florida State defense. The offense sucked, and there is absolutely no getting around it. But they only gave up 6 points to a team that's ranked in the top 15 that scores a whole lot of points most weeks. And I mean, I'm not going to sit here all of a sudden and say Jack Plummer is a very good quarterback, because I have said all year that I don't think Jack Plummer is a very good quarterback. but I don't think he's a 14 for 36 for 111 yards quarterback either. So, yeah, I mean, that was a very, very impressive defensive performance from Florida State in the game when they needed it most.
It was high risk because it had to be.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like you can't run a defense if you got a third string quarterback out there that's going to give up 20 or 17. Like
But they played like they knew it.
Yes,
like
that's
that.
what I'm saying. Like
Yes.
they played like aggressive press coverage the entire time. They ran tons of games up front. Like it was like, hey, got to knock them off their track. Got to get a lot of tackles for loss. Got to probably try to create turnovers, to flip the field. And they did it. Like I thought they were super. Honestly, one of the reasons in this game why you didn't have very many completions was both sides were just grabby as hell. I was like, oh, whoa, okay. Like now Plummer played better than Glenn did, I think, but not by a lot. And that was in large part due, to the defense. Braden Fisk had 9 tackles from his defensive tackle spot. Like that's a guy that walks around in the boot for most of the week, and then they let him loose to go rip. That's a guy that I think if you're Florida State, if you make it into the playoff, you're excited about him getting healthy. The other guy that I think, I don't know if Norvell's talked about this yet. I'm assuming he will, or at least somebody in the committee will know. They get Darrell Jackson back for the playoff.
Oh, with the waiver, because he gets in after the semester.
Darrell Jackson wrecks FSU in practice. Like Darrell Jackson might be Florida State's best defensive tackle. So do I think they would score a lot of points in a playoff game? I do not. Do I think a lot of people would score a lot of points on them in a playoff game if you get Darrell Jackson back? No, I also do not. Like it will probably be a battle.
I'm not ready to spin it ahead because I do think there was a little bit of what we saw that was unique to college football. Like the reasons why the games have to matter, because whether it is the leadership in that locker room from the player standpoint, or whether it's the coaching staff, they came out hair on fire, Jared Verse, Braden Fisk, Tatum Bethune, Kalen DeLoach, go back to September when they're going to lose to Clemson and Kalen DeLoach says no. Like that was my sort of like strong thought was whether it came from, again, like Adam Fuller, the defensive coordinator, like maybe, I don't know, but those are also just some old guys, Braden Fisk has been playing college football for a long time. He came from Western Michigan. Jared Verse started his career at Albany. You've got these journeymen who clearly had, whether it was explicit and said or whether they just sort of all knew, they're like, everything that we have done in our college careers, the decision to come to Florida State, where we have been, it is on us to go and win this game. And I felt like Florida State's defense went and did it. I mean, it was just, again, that if you want to look for like the heart of a champion, our buddy Robbie Calland was talking me into it earlier in the week. He was like, I'm not going to doubt the heart of the Husky. Not going to doubt the heart of the Husky. And we'll get to Washington in just a little bit. But, he was going through all the one scores. Like, I don't know, man. It's just something a little extra. And it was just that little bit of extra that Florida State's defense had that was we are not going to lose. And in college sports, like that stuff matters. And so I was incredibly impressed by the DNA, the fabric, whatever you want to call it, the guts that Florida State showed in terms of those defensive players to be able to lead the Seminoles to a victory. Anything else from this one we want to highlight? I was a little bit disappointed in Florida State's offense. I understand it was Brock Glenn, but like I kind of thought everybody could have been a little bit better on that side.
15 practices in a month before they play again. Things could look a lot different by the time you see Florida State again. But I will say,
that's actually a good point. I hadn't thought about that.
I always enjoy a football game in which a punter gets tackled trying to kick the ball still. That's just
that. Yeah, that was
we're just not going to block these 3 guys over here. Just let them get a free run.
Also, by the way, like if I'm going to do double shout outs to Robbie, I hadn't heard from Robbie in like 2 days and got a text from him right before the show started. He said, Jack Plummer, my man, you need to go pro in something other than sports.
Yeah.
I'll aim for you. What, Bud? Do you not want to bury this guy? Like, are you?
No, I look. I do think we should recognize like Louisville had a really nice season. Like,
yes, yeah.
That's
But like,
one of the last times
think
we'll talk
about
about
the
it
end
for a while.
result. They had a manageable schedule. Everybody took the over on their win total. Las Vegas loved them to be able to have a pretty good season and contend for an ACC title, and they did, and they were right there.
And if you had a quarterback,
And my Louisville
Plummer,
ticket,
you're an ACC champion.
Oh yeah,
Oh no!
oh man, yeah.
That's what you were reaching for. You were reaching for the ticket to rip.
I knew it was up here somewhere.
For those watching on youtube.com/cover3, we just saw, I've seen a lot of Bud's futures tickets pulled out. That's one of the very few. Seriously, seriously, this is one of the very few I've seen actually be shredded here live on air.
I had over on UTEP this year too, so we don't bat 1,000, buddy.
Yeah, that's, I don't know. It was not the most enjoyable watch. It was not the.
I felt at home. I don't know what you're talking about. That was like it's a nice, comfortable couch for me. Just watching that game, nice and warm and comfy. Just like I've been here a billion times. Shout
out to David Cobb. I was live blogging the Florida State Louisville game for most of the game, and then all of a sudden it was running late. We had a show to get ready for, and I was like, this is a lot to handle. Game was still in doubt, so thank you, David. I appreciate you helping tie everything up there at the end.
I will point out, and this is a competitor site, so I'm not going to. But there is a site that runs like live odds you can bet on during games. Heisman Playoff. Before the kickoff, Alabama was -1,000 to make the playoff. Right now, -140.
Yeah, I mean, because it's a 5-4 proposition, right? Yeah. All right.
Could have gotten 7-1 on Bama to miss, like right after all the hysteria of that game. If you be interesting tomorrow. All right, let's talk games. You're right.
Yes, let's talk games. I'm gonna put Michigan, Iowa on the back burner. Is that okay?
Aw.
Nick did it to him. Nick did it to him again. I hope I said it here on Cover 3, but I did have the sense that if it was close, I had more faith in Alabama winning from the vibes perspective, right? Vibes GPT says if you're going to get one of these quarterbacks, if you're going to get one of these offenses, one of these teams that's going to get caught in a dogfight, like I think Alabama coming out of what they just did to Auburn, just going to have like a little bit of extra juice versus the team that had been sitting with the number one beside its name all season long. And yeah, like against Missouri, it was a little bit close. Slow start against South Carolina, slow start against Auburn, but just blew the doors off Ole Miss and dominated Tennessee. And while Georgia Tech had a close final margin, you never really had that. You never really had to fight quite like Alabama has had to fight throughout the entire season. I hadn't thought about this. Great championship Saturday for vibes. What did we see along the way? Because Alabama, Georgia felt like it was truly a heavyweight bout where there were like 3 or 4 different chapters in terms of what was happening. Tom, where do you want to start in terms of like what stands out to you out of the game?
That I don't think offensively either team really played well.
Hold on. Yes, in the second half. The end of the
second
game.
half for sure, but
yeah.
I mean, even in the entire game, Alabama finished with 4.8 yards per play. It's not like they were tearing it apart all day. I think what stood out was, to me, the first thing I noticed was, we've talked about it, Georgia for the most part all year long would come out in a base defense and wait to see what you were trying to do to it before it would start tinkering and changing things up and doing the stuff it wanted to do. That was not the case today. Georgia came right out of the gate, like double spying Jalen, trying to keep him in the pocket. And it became clear, which not altogether unpredictable, considering what we've talked about Jalen Milroe being, they wanted to keep Jalen locked up in the pocket, and they wanted to take away the deep ball. And they were going to be like, all right, bro, hit the singles and the doubles. And if you could do it enough, cool. And Jalen hit enough singles and doubles. Like, Jalen improvised a lot better, I think, than I have seen him at any other point. Like the one play, I can't remember, I think it was to Bond, where he was just kind of, he scrambled out of the pocket, he was harried, and he just kind of did the Patrick Mahomes flip.
The little pitch forward. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was huge.
I was like, oh my, I didn't realize Jalen had that in the bag just yet. So I feel like while he didn't have a great game overall from a numbers perspective, I do think that was one of the most impressive performances I've seen from him as far as a passer, in that it wasn't always pretty, especially because he got off to such a terrible start. He was like, 0 for his first 4. And then, so he finishes 13 for 19 after that. But to overcome the shaky start, to make the plays more often than not when they needed him, he did get caught in the pocket too much. He was sacked a little bit too often, and he got away with it. But I just feel like that was kind of a very gutsy performance from Milroe against a very good secondary that did, for the most part, a decent job of locking Alabama's receivers up. Because if you look, Bond is the only one who caught more than 2 passes. Like, they had to really spread the ball around to find any kind of success in the air and move it down the field. Georgia was the same story for the most part, although they've kind of been that way all year. So I think the 2 defenses were the best units on the field for most of the night. But I think, as far as players who had the biggest impact, or at least made the biggest moments, it was Jalen Milroe. And then on the other side, like, Bowers and McConkey clearly were not 100%. McConkey was like limping off the field every other play. Bowers just looked kind of slow. But even as big as those injuries were, I felt like when they lost Mims, the game really turned, because it took away a lot of what they could do on offense, because they just no longer really had the guys up front who could block Bama.
We talked a couple weeks ago about live betting against Kent State when they lost their tackle. It was like, what's the chances Kent State, an awful team, has another guy whose body looks like that when he went down, right? Like, Mims is a really important part of that team. He's a freak. We talked about how it was going to be a challenge for him to block the Bama guys. The backup for Georgia, like Braswell and Turner did a really nice job on him. I thought Nick Saban did a great job of getting Alabama to play, or getting Georgia to play Alabama's game. Like, that's kind of how the game had to be played for Alabama to win it. Like, they had less than 5 yards of play. The offense didn't look good to me, and they won the game. They were the more physical football team. They pushed Georgia around a little bit, and it didn't really lead to many scores. What did lead to scores, for the most part, was, a play that Georgia fans are probably going to make a documentary about, because they seem to think that the refs steal the game from them every time they play Alabama. But legitimately, like,
the Bond,
whether or not that was a catch, I tend to think it probably was not a catch, because the entirety of the bottom of the ball is laying on the ground and then also moves and bounces around. But who knows? It's 2023. What's a catch? What's not? That was huge. And then getting the turnover deep in Georgia's zone. Like, those 2 things directly led to scores. Bama obviously earned that, right? Well, maybe not the Bond catch. That's a 4th down stop for Georgia and probably going the other way. But, like, Bama was really physical. They have sort of a more narrow window to win because of how limited they are passing the football. And yet they played within that window and deserved to win, or at least didn't clearly deserve to lose. That's a hell of a job by Nick Saban.
Yeah, I want to get to that in just a second.
That defense is nuts.
Kirby Smart talking to, hey, y'all see Dennis on the broadcast?
Mm-hmm.
The Dodfather,
big time now,
on Big CBS, gets the one-on-one with Kirby. And And Kirby was doing, I will say that based on the tone of the interview, in case you haven't seen it, it was more explanation than excuse, because a lot of it was talking about how proud he was of the team. But he talked about the throw to Jam Miller. He was like, we've got a freshman linebacker in there because we're a little bit banged up. He makes the wrong play because on the wheel route, I mean, that was ridiculous, right? And when you have two defenders on a tight end that's breaking to the inside and your running back is wide open to the flat, like that was a huge moment in the game. Then he talked about, we were down 2 receivers. I mean, basically Kirby went through an injury report in a 90-second interview with Dennis Dodd to be able to explain like how proud he was of his team for fighting. And here's all the reasons why things did not go well for us today. He seems to, believe that if you're going to point fingers at why this 1-score game did not go Georgia's way, it seems kind of fine with the idea that a lot of it was because of health. But I did have a thought during the game. It faded as Alabama's offense was not as successful in the second half. In fact, it was, if you were to follow like their success rate in real time, it's kind of like a steep downward climb throughout a lot of the second half.
Mm-hmm.
But after the holding penalty that set up the 1st and 20, and then it was the Jam Miller touchdown, like the next 10 plays or so, kind of felt like Tommy Rees was in his bag. Kind of thought that, they were doing a good job of keeping Georgia's defense off balance. And maybe some of that is personnel related, where they found a couple things they wanted to exploit. After halftime, it ends up getting adjusted. But man, new offensive coordinator in Tommy Rees, new defensive coordinator. You've got the whole, who's calling the plays that Lane Kiffin's calling out early in the year. Nick Saban, the coaching job that he did with this group, a group that he even said himself, I like the way I'm paraphrasing here, but I like the way these guys practice. I like the way these guys compete. There's kind of this unsaid acknowledgement. They are not as talented as most Alabama teams, but the fact that the fabric of what they've got is something that made him really happy, had him smiling more than ever before. I felt like those things showed up today in Atlanta in the SEC championship.
He's loving this win, man. Don't you think? I think he knows his team's not that good. I'm not saying like he's out there saying that they're not good. They're good. They're damn good. The defense is really good. But this is winning Nick's way. He's got to be loving it. I bet you he really, really enjoyed this one. Especially because of how well his defense played the stuff that Georgia was trying to do to get their guys open. To Tom's point, with McConkey and Bowers being limited, man, how many times did Bama bust? They played the switches well. They played all the crossers well. They rarely got picked. I mean, we talked about a freshman linebacker getting picked for the Jam Miller touchdown. How many times did Bama get picked? Right?
And
Bama was you have to beat us one-on-one.
Kool-Aid got knocked out of the
they lost
game.
Kool-Aid. Yeah,
Right,
and they
exactly.
still didn't screw up.
Yeah.
Arnold had a great game.
Extremely well coached defensive effort by Alabama. That was really, really good. Milroe, no turnovers, right?
Nope.
That's pretty huge too.
He did a great job of holding onto the football as he was getting dragged to the ground for 12-yard losses.
Yes. Yeah. That was and Georgia's plan was clear. They were playing a double spy, literally, on Milroe. And it was okay, if a guy goes to this side, cool, the other guy drops off. But initially, they're playing 2 spy, which is not a normal defense you play.
You have to really trust your secondary if you are going to be playing 2 spies.
Yeah.
And there were a couple, what they got 2 pass interference calls on deep throws. The deep balls did not necessarily always hit, but the threat of that, especially with everything they were committing to trying to stop Milroe running, led to the one-on-one opportunities. That is a couple Bond catches, controversial or not. That is Jermaine Burton bobbling another one and being able to pull it down in the end zone. It was a fun game.
Mm-hmm.
It was.
Anything else on Bama, Georgia before we hit a break and keep it rocking? No.
Not really.
No.
Yeah. Right.
Uga's cute.
Uga's cute.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't make it, they should rematch. Like I'd watch that again.
So can we do? Is the Sugar Bowl one of the semis this year? Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we
How
can't.
about the
do it
Peach?
there.
Put
There
them
we
in
go.
the
Peach Bowl, Georgia, Alabama, same stadium, same everything.
There's a super wonky conversation that we don't need right now, which is if you're Michigan and you're given, because anybody who could be in the running for the 1 seed gets the opportunity to declare their preference. The 1 seed gets to say whether they want to be Sugar or Rose.
Rose Bowl. They'll take the Rose.
You think you'll take the Rose?
They're not going to want to play in Atlanta against like a Texas
You mean New Orleans?
Or New Orleans against like a Texas or a Florida State. They're going to go to the Rose Bowl.
So like Michigan, Texas, and then Washington, Florida State in the Sugar.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whoever it is, the number
I think
one
Florida
seed's
State
going
would be
to.
extremely. Yeah, I think they would take that right now.
Yeah.
You
The
think
number one seed will take the Rose Bowl. Whoever ends up
Yes.
getting it.
Michigan, Florida State, Rose, Washington, Texas, Sugar would make Washington furious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We'll see. Coming up on the other side, let's talk about those Texas Longhorns and what they did in a blowout win against Oklahoma State. Plus, Michigan's defense dominates against Iowa. A bar continues to sell alcohol, maybe to this moment, and more next.
We're back for an all-new season of Ink Master.
This is wild.
And 3-time Ink Master winner DJ Tamby returns as a judge.
Guaranteed there's going to be some shots fired.
I gotta watch out back. You're gonna get it because you talk a lot, bro.
This tattoo is badass.
That is insanity.
This piece is super dynamic. You better strap in and be ready for the ride.
Victory is a work of art. Ink Master, new season, now streaming exclusively on Paramount+.
So we started, we had a great check-in with 24/7 Sports National College Football reporter Matt Zenitz on CBS Sports HQ as part of our pregame show. And it was, sort of Quinn Ewers related. The idea that, Quinn, could be coming back to Texas. What does that mean? And then he throws for I don't know, half a mile in yards against Oklahoma State, gets a little bit hurt. That was scary, but then comes, back into the game. We started the day with style points. 49-21 is the final for the Texas Longhorns against Oklahoma State. Bud, this Longhorns team gave us a little bit of everything because I thought their defense was feisty. Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy were unblockable once again. Sweat even jumps in with a touchdown reception, hits the Heisman pose. Hello. That was awesome. What do you see out of the Longhorns?
So I was on with Luganbill and Roddy Jones on Sirius the other day. And I said something that kind of made him stop. And I said, when it comes to playoff time, I jack everybody's rating to what their ceiling is. And I have Texas as the number 2 ceiling in the country. They don't always play like that, but I think their ceiling is better than just about everybody's. Georgia being the one team that I think it's a better ceiling. They played kind of to that ceiling today, right? They have a lot of really, really good players. They have an elite play caller in Steve Sarkisian. They don't always play to this level, but their A game, it's like facing a good pitcher, right? Who's got a lot of good stuff. If he's around the plate, you're probably not beating him. If he's walking everybody and they're sloppy, you may have a chance. They created 342 yards after the catch today. 342 after the catch.
Mm-hmm.
I think 3/4 of Quinn Ewers' passes were behind the line of scrimmage, and it didn't matter because they formation and motion the hell out of the Oklahoma State defense. I think Brian Nardo, the Oklahoma State D coordinator, I thought he'd done a tremendous job all year. Oak State loses their best linebacker and their best corner in the first quarter. I'm like, oh man, It's time to do some live betting, gentlemen, because I'm pretty sure I've watched a lot of this Oklahoma State team. I've sweated this 60-1 future the whole time, and I am really certain here they don't have depth that can play. And Texas looked much faster, and I mean, they just never adjusted to it, right? Like it was, they smoked them, kind of running like 3 or 4 of the same plays all the time, like different window dressing, but the same concept.
Sure. You
can't run with us to the flat. We're going to catch a ball, and we're going to turn it upfield before you can get to us.
Well, all right. So the script was flawless, right?
Yeah.
Ewers starts 12 for 12, 14 for 15. You know, he has 3 touchdown passes before the time anyone's finished their lunch. You look at them through the first 17 plays, they were averaging 11.5 yards per play. Then things slowed, right? You know, like you got off the script. I thought that to the point of everything we've said about Steve Sarkisian this year, he had dialed in exactly what he wanted. He had gotten on the same page as his quarterback, and they were in sync and executed it extremely well at a high level. And Oklahoma State, we talked about it. Like they did a good job. We were like, hey, that Oklahoma State offensive line did a good job of blocking BYU. Couldn't block Texas at all. At all. I mean, the defense was strong too. So, sorry, Tom. I didn't mean to jump ahead of you there, but I thought that start was just representative of a group that was well prepared to go out and play one of its best football games, to Bud's point, as close to its ceiling as it was going to get there for the first quarter, 15, 20, 25 minutes of the game.
Yeah, the thing about Oklahoma State this year is you tend to know quick what kind of game you're going to get.
Like the UCF game, for example.
So true.
If they're in it at the end of the first quarter, they're going to be in it all 4 quarters. If they're not out of it after the first 5 minutes, they're not going to battle their way back. And that's exactly. I mean, this game was done quick.
You see Ollie Gordon like banging his helmet on the sideline. I mean, Oklahoma State was.
They knew.
Like, they were mad.
They knew they had no shot in hell winning this game after 5 minutes. But like, just looking at this, we talk about the script, but like Oklahoma State's offense, all right, and this is according to the stat broadcast, they had 5 big plays for 140 yards. Texas had 22 for 478 yards. Texas was 10 of 16 on 3rd down, despite the average distance being 7 yards. And then the one thing that I've hammered Texas for all season long, they can't finish drives. Texas had 5 red zone possessions today. Texas scored 5 touchdowns on them. They were perfect. This was just from start to finish a decimation by a team that, like you're saying, but has a very high ceiling when they are at their best. And they knew, or at least they played like winning will be good for us, but we kind of need to make a point in the process. And I think that they checked everything they needed to do off the board, or at least every goal that they had going into this game today. Check. We accomplished it. And it was just, I mean, I put the MAC championship game on the main screen pretty quick this morning.
Yeah. Shout out Kelvin Banks, just moving people. That was excellent. If we want to nitpick this slightly, I don't think the Texas secondary is great. And the way they play one-on-ones is not, I don't know if you run up against a really good passing attack, how that looks. They, in the first probably 20 minutes, Oklahoma State really challenged them deep, and they caught one. They got 1 PI. They got another one that really should have been a PI. And in watching it, I was like, oh man, this is going to change this game, because like Oklahoma State sees this is what Texas is giving them. They take it. It's a pretty bad non-PI call, and then they have to punt, and immediately they get the fair catch interference, right? Or face mask, whatever it was. It was like a face mask. Okay, this is not a good script for Oklahoma State. So, could a better team exploit Texas by throwing the football down the field? I think that's where we're going to be looking to. Well, I guess I just gave away what I think we'll be talking about for the next month with this playoff, assuming Texas makes it in, which I think
like basically the idea that if Texas plays Washington,
yeah, right. Like maybe there's some stuff.
I mean, of all the teams we're talking about, there is not a passing attack like Washington's.
Right.
Like Throw Alabama in there too, sure. But like top
Definitely
5 teams.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm saying like throw whatever playoff combination you throw out there. If you are concerned about your pass defense, then there is a monster that is 13-0 that will be in the playoff that you do not want to face.
Because you're not going to run on those guys very well.
So Tom and I have you turned your Heisman ballot in yet, Tom?
Mm-mm.
So we're sworn. I haven't either. We're sworn to secrecy on our Heisman ballot. I do not think we're sworn to secrecy on our Biletnikoff ballot, right?
I don't know.
I don't know. You don't?
I don't know. I don't think we are.
I don't think we are either. So I hope I'm not going to get it taken away. I won't specifically say it, but I was like really sitting down with it. And I was like, shoot, man. I think Rome Odunze might be the best wide receiver in college football this year. He had 3 drops.
Mm-hmm.
And remember when Tom was talking about the Rome Odunze show? About like almost as a criticism, right? But it was like we're only targeting Rome Odunze. Man had 3 drops all year.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible stuff. Malik Neighbors also would like a word. I understand. But
a lot of good wide receivers out there, Chip. All deserving of our attention and love.
Yeah. Hey, listen. Malik Neighbors ain't in the college football playoff.
I don't know if I could vote for Malik Neighbors. His team lost 3 games. So.
But that other, no, I'm just kidding.
Dude, Daniels, to totally sidetrack this, the improvement he made is nuts.
Oh, like
all the credit,
a general like
wow.
Jaden Daniels appreciation moment.
Yeah, he used to turn touchdowns into first downs, and now he just just an amazing job. Because I don't know how much we got to talk about him after the A&M game, and it just kind of ties in with Oregon Washington, which Chip's the best host in the business for a reason. So I don't want to jump ahead. I assume that's where you're going.
Yeah, I absolutely.
I mean, dude. DeBoer is 111 and 11 or something like that, or 104 and 11. I should probably do some research, look up the stat, but it's like over 111 as a head coach. Winners win. Like that's a terrible analysis, but some guys do just find a way.
No, but I'm so proud to hear that come out of your mouth. I mean, Mr. Postgame win expectancy would not say winners win, but I am appreciative that you still embrace the winners win side of this.
Don't you kind of feel like certain coaches find a way?
Yes, of course.
Usually, yeah. Like
Tom did a stellar job of live blogging this game too. Like was dialed in and had way more to talk about than I did having to live blog the ACC championship. I mean, you at least had swings and like big plays. And it was so funny. Everybody was like, check out Tom's live blog. He did a good job of including highlights. And it was really funny because when I was doing the ACC game,
I had highlights to put in. I
was scanning the Florida State official account, the Louisville official account, the ACC official account, the ESPN official account. There were no highlights. You had good highlights in there. But how'd you read Washington, Oregon?
It's a tough game. Like Washington, it is a weird team to kind of figure out. Like I've said, it's a wagon all year, but I still like the first time that these two teams played, I thought Oregon would win. And I thought Oregon would win the rematch, and they didn't win either one. And it's kind of like something with Bud's touching it. Like Kalen DeBoer's teams just always seem to find a way. They came out very motivated, clearly, to win this game. And I think that they found something that worked, and they did it repeatedly. Like there were a whole lot of corner routes that they were hitting against this Oregon team. And Oregon, like if you look defensively all year long, slot receivers have tended to do well against them. So they put a Odunze in the slot a lot. He had a huge game. McMillan comes back. He's put in the slot. Like Jalen Polk had been there most of the season with McMillan out, but McMillan comes back. He's healthy. He's in the slot. He has a huge game. And then they figured out how to take away what Oregon does well offensively. Like it's kind of the similar approach that what Georgia tried to do with Milroe, but Milroe was able to beat him. They took away Bo Nix's strength. Bo Nix wasn't able to beat him. And I think Washington's defensive line played incredibly well. And they pressured Bo Nix in the pocket, and they harassed him more than he has been harassed, because that offensive line for Oregon on the season has done a terrific job of protecting him and giving him time. That was not the case as well on Friday night. And then I also think, like, I love Michael Penix. He was not the MVP of that game. They gave it to him, but he wasn't.
Dylan
Johnson
yeah.
was the MVP of that game. Dylan Johnson ran for 152 yards. He ran for 2 touchdowns. He threw for as many touchdowns as Michael Penix did. He had a touchdown pass. And it was one of the things, I'm sitting there watching this game and I'm thinking, man, because I think Dylan Johnson's claim to fame was the Instagram post he put out when he announced his transfer, when he kind of dogged Mike Leach. And then what happened, the tragedy happened shortly afterwards. And it was just really bad timing on his part. But eliminating that, like, I know Dylan Johnson is from Mississippi and maybe he just wanted to be close to home, but man, you are too good at running the ball to have ever gone to Mississippi State in the first place. He's had nearly as many carries this year as he did in his entire career with the Bulldogs, because he was playing in an air raid offense. And I think it was nice for him because he went to Washington clearly because he wanted a chance to showcase his ability as a complete runner, not just a guy who can catch passes out of the backfield. And for him to have that kind of performance in the spotlight in the Pac-12 championship game to clinch his team's conference title, to clinch a playoff berth, I think is huge for him. I think he's been a tremendous asset to them over the second half of the season when they've started to lean more into their run game. And I think that if the Washington team that we saw Friday night plays like that in the playoff, that team has a legitimate shot to win the whole damn thing.
That they are just so good at breaking your coverage rules. And like I bet Oregon. I thought Oregon was going to win. I thought Oregon was going to win pretty handily. And most of that was because of how Penix had looked for about the past 5 weeks, which to me was hurt. Like short arming the ball, just missing guys that normally he doesn't miss. I don't know what he took, like Popeyes, spinach, Superman potion, whatever you want to go with here. Anti-pain inhaler, whatever. Like you guys saw him. Like
I got some great green juice out of the CBS Sports HQ. I was sitting there, I was like, man, I haven't had any vegetables. I'm gonna get one of these green juices to be able to put in my body on this work trip. Yeah, something.
Michael Penix has not looked that good in over a month, guys. Like that I was watching like, oh, I'm dead here. Penix is fine, and this is tremendous work by Washington. The overwhelming feeling I have coming away from this game is how off balance Washington kept Oregon's defense. Like I kept watching for like, is Penix really hurt? Is his ribs? What is going on here? Oregon barely touched him. Like they didn't get a lot of they didn't get the sack, but they did get a nice pop on the guy. They just kept him off balance. Washington's offensive line just blocked their butts off, but they also did a nice job of using formation and motion to figure out kind of what the coverage rules were going to be to out leverage Oregon multiple times. Like their screen stuff in the first half, like throughout the first 20 minutes, I'm like, all right, Penix isn't making big time throws here. A lot of these are horizontal balls behind the line of scrimmage, and their edge guys are blocking extremely well. Like their skill guys are blocking, and Oregon is out leveraged or they're out gapped. And eventually they were able to hit him with that Dylan Johnson stuff. To Tom's point, that is just a great job of coaching. I mean, DeBoer kind of won him that game.
Mm-hmm. I also
think, Grubb, I guess. Yeah, sorry.
I think like it's a complicated game, but it's also very simple. And maybe it's one of those things that we kind of overlooked because, when we're in charge of covering the entire country, you can get kind of lost in some of the details. But the fact that Jalen McMillan was kind of banged up all year and Washington struggled at times, maybe we didn't do a good enough job of kind of connecting those dots, because at the end of the day, when you've got Roma Dunze, Jalen McMillan, and Jalen Polk, there really aren't many defenses in this country that can do a good job of stopping your offense because you can't cover all three of them. And we saw that on Friday night. All three were on the field and all three were as close to 100% healthy as they have been since the beginning of the season. And they cooked Oregon time and time again. And that's why I think if that offense is healthy going into the playoff, they've got a really good shot against anybody they face.
To shout out Quinnen Williams, y'all had a great conversation with Roquan Smith as well. But that's why we're going to talk about those Alabama offenses as like legendary. Because what in the world is a college secondary going to do when you've got to do 3 NFL wide receivers at once? College offenses don't have 3 NFL wide receivers at once. Yeah, it's very, very unique. Great job of recruiting, evaluation, development. The way that they've been able to put it all together there for the Huskies. All right, let's set a break and then continue to wrap it up. Coming up on the other side, we'll get into Michigan and Iowa. Huge win for Troy. Miami, Ohio getting it done. Oh, yeah. SMU, no starting quarterback? No problem. Mustangs in the American Athletic Conference era with a bang. And more. Next.
Wake up to football highlights and news from around the world with the one and only Morning Footy team.
Rise and shine, football fans. Welcome to Morning Footy.
Start your all-day football craze with Morning Footy, part of the all-new Golazo Network.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast. Laptop sounds like a jet engine that's about to take off right now.
That's me every show.
Yeah, I'm used to the home studio, with the big old desktop and the machine going. But we're all good. We're still rocking. I mean, connection seems okay, right?
Yeah, you seem great.
All right, cool.
You got that hotspot?
I do. It's available. We need it.
Got it. Okay.
As of right now, we're just rocking and rolling with a regular hotel setup. But yeah, I'm got the hot spot on the ready in case this starts to get a little bit jumbled coming down the stretch. Okay, I'm gonna be honest here. Again, I mentioned I live blogged Florida State Louisville. I was working on. We actually did have tomorrow's top 25 today. That still got turned. I know, but look, hey, 10 of the top 25 teams actually were in action. There was some shuffling. You had to have SMU jumping up.
Everybody's dying to know what the AP poll looks like tomorrow.
I know, but hey, look, the SEO on college football rankings still works. Not to give the game away, but so Tom or Bud, I didn't get any eyes on Michigan, Iowa. So what did I miss?
Son of a bitch. You missed exactly what you thought you missed.
Okay.
Iowa never had a prayer in this game, and offensively, they couldn't do anything. It was the same old story as it has been all season long. The only difference is Michigan's offense really couldn't do anything either. Like, I'm gonna rewatch it because I'm disgusting, but it will be kind of what I'm trying to figure out if it was like a Georgia situation last week against Georgia Tech, because like a lot of what Michigan was doing offensively was going like horizontally. And it didn't make a ton of sense to me because like Iowa plays a lot of zone. They're very disciplined. And while they're not like super fast, if you're going side to side, more times than not, you're not going to get a big play.
They've got bodies there because they're disciplined. Yeah, okay. I got you.
And I kept sitting there waiting. All right, well, Michigan's going to take a deep shot here soon. It's going to take it. And then they never really did. And I don't know if it was just they were like, we're up 2 scores. We're up 3 scores. The only way we can lose this game is if we take a needless shot that we don't have to turn the ball over and give this team momentum. So I feel like a lot of the time Michigan was content just to be like, all right, if we have to take the sack and punt, we'll take the sack and punt. But still, their 2 scoring drives in this game were a 5-yard drive following a long punt return and a 6-yard drive. So it was 11 yards on 2 touchdown drives. Other than that, they managed 3 or 4 field goals. Iowa's defense played very, very well overall, but it was the same old story. Their offense did absolutely nothing for them. Even so, where it's like the one Deacon Hill fumble that set them up with a short field for their second touchdown, I don't think it was a fumble.
Yeah.
I also think the clear and immediate recovery aspect of it was very much not what happened. So for them to overturn it surprised me, but at the same time, if I'm an Iowa fan, it's like, well, that sucks. I don't know how mad I could really be because, well, it's not like it would have mattered. So like, okay, we'll take that touchdown away. We only lost 19-0, so I don't know. It was It was exactly what you thought the Big Ten championship was going to be. I'm just happy Blake Corum got the 2 touchdowns like I said he would, because I did bet that prop.
So I'm sorry. I did a disservice. I should have properly introduced this game.
It's time for sicko mode. Let's go.
How many halves would Michigan have to play against Iowa for Iowa to go over its 2.5 in any half team total? Because they kind of almost had it there in the first half, almost, and then they didn't. A couple like things I'll take away from this: Brian Ferentz losing his absolute mind after the turnover call. Yes. He did wear Iowa gear, by the way, and that was he got it. That's a great time to get an unsportsmanlike penalty, by the way. No sarcasm, because it's only half the distance to the goal.
Right. Oh yes.
Right?
Yeah. The ultimate.
If you want to air the ref out, that is a good time to do it. We did see some guys air some refs out today. We'll get to that Troy game in a second.
John Summerall was going to break that man in half.
Man, yeah. Has there ever been a 13-0 potential number 1 overall seed that we knew less about than Michigan? Or is that who they are?
I don't think I know who they are at all. It's
Will Johnson didn't play today. And it was so funny because they trotted out. They're like, all right, let's go through the injury report. Which of these injuries is significant? And I'm running through it in my head before I open my mouth. And I'm like, well, I'm not concerned about a secondary issue for Michigan against Iowa. That's for sure.
They play so slow. They don't really show anything. Like from coaches who we talk to who have played them, it's like, yeah, they have real first, second round dudes on that D line who will mess you up. You can't really hide or slow play that. We pretty sure that's the case. Everywhere else, I don't know. Tom, their center went out. They had a couple other offensive linemen hurt.
I do have legitimate concerns about their offensive line.
Yeah.
Because I do think you can't just lose Zach Zinter, who is a very, very good offensive lineman, and think, that won't be a problem. But they have been banged up at other spots. And you would, if you're Michigan, you're hoping that the month or whatever between now and when you're actually going to play again, it helps you heal up and improve. But depending on if they get Texas in their semi, that's going to be a problem. Because I don't know if the current construct of the Michigan offensive line could really hold up against that defensive line. So that's going to be very interesting to see. But you're right. They've played 2 games this year where it feels like they actually had to try. And one of them was not tonight's game. So it is hard to know who they are offensively, because I don't know how many times this year they've really had to go into anything beyond the first or second page of their playbook. And that will be a very interesting thing to see in the playoff, because I do remember they lost that game to TCU last year, but they also pulled some stuff out in the game that you hadn't really seen before. And I'm guessing we'll see something similar this year. It's just they're going to hope for better results, obviously.
Yeah, not 2 pick sixes.
Correct. Yeah. I would highly recommend to anybody who makes the playoff this year, don't throw 2 pick sixes in your semifinal.
I mean, you mention it a lot. We mention it a lot. So our regular audience, we've got a huge group watching us live right now on youtube.com/cover3. Hit that subscribe if you'd like some more, because we're going to be rocking with you all through the rest of the season and all through the off season. Talk to anybody who's with us. We continue this conversation with our love of college football. So we appreciate everybody jumping in. I know this is a unique time for the sport with these kind of playoff debates. So thanks for hanging out. But there were 2 pick sixes in that game. What was a 6 point? I don't have.
And Michigan still almost won. Yes.
52-46 or something like that.
Yeah.
Spotting them 14 points. A lot of people in the Cover 3 tailgate continuing to bring up the points that Georgia spotted Alabama today, as being impactful. Yeah.
It turns out you shouldn't give your other team points if you're trying to beat them. It's a crazy strategy.
This is how you stay number one in the college ball podcast charts. Is it analysis like this? This is what we got, guys.
All right, bud. So
we're out here. We got teams out here keeping USGA handicaps. Like, you know what? We're going to give you 14 points to start. We'll just see what happens.
You mentioned heading into the weekend. You did, Bud. You did an appropriate thing of acknowledging a good point that was made to you regarding Troy and App State. That App State's run defense had improved, and I mentioned that Sean Clark had discussed some of the personnel changes, and like I credited the coaching that they had said, like, look, even though these guys might not be the starters at the beginning of the year, they might not be the most highly rated guys, but these are the guys that are going after it in practice. We're going to start to give them playing time. And you know what? The run defense did improve, and defensively they did improve. And Aguilar settled in, the passing attack took off. And you said, we'll see if that run defense is able to do something against Troy. Kamari Vidal. More than 200 yards and 5 touchdowns later, Troy ran it up on him to claim a Sun Belt title. An incredible little 2-year run here for your boy John Summerall.
I just think the guy's a really good coach. Like Troy just plays their ass off almost every game. There's not a lot of teams that just play hair on fire all the time, but do so relatively under control, and they kind of do that. It's a fun team to watch. Now, I will give a lot of flowers to App State's run defense for about the first 12 or so minutes of this game. Like, they really did a nice job of stopping it. They were winning the line of scrimmage, and they were loading it up. Like, it wasn't just, hey, our guys are winning. Like, they were outnumbering Troy. And Troy, I think smartly here, I tweeted about this, they stopped running the ball. They're like, oh, okay, so in a 10-man box, we're no longer going to run the ball. We're going to actually throw the ball around. And Watson just threw it all over the yard for about the next 7 or 8 minutes. They score, and then it gets into a situation, and they pop a draw that App's not really expecting. Vidal hits it pretty nice after they go down and score again. Like, oh, cool, 14 at the half. Do credit to App, man. They mounted an awesome drive, score right before half. I'm like, oh, we got a ball game here. But ultimately, Troy's defense just totally ripped. 10 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, and like you said, 5 touchdowns for Vidal. And I mean, that was pretty dominant. The final score, I don't think, indicates
how close the game was.
Yeah, like the game had some back and forth. Like with 10 minutes left, I think you knew it was probably over. But Troy did tack on 2, maybe not over, but like pretty well in hand.
And they were both 17? After Summerall lost his mind.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Okay. So you guys will probably see this clip. Do we have the clip? That's on me. I didn't tell Jordan to load it up. So it's like 2nd down, and Watson, the quarterback, gets his helmet like reversed onto his head to where did his face go type thing. Not quite that bad, but it was a pretty clear face mask, and Summerall loses his shit to where I think is it the DB coach?
Oh, I thought it was
some poor soul.
I thought it was Stafford because I didn't see a headset.
I'm pretty well. The guy's Twitter name, because Summerall tweeted the photo with him. It's like we're all good because they were joking around about him grabbing him.
Okay.
But yeah, like kind of had to be not like held back from hitting the guy, but like held back from getting a little closer to let the guy know just how bad that call was. And then they got I don't know if it's a bailout, but like if there was any question as to whether there was defensive holding or not on the next play, there was some defensive holding for sure. Because I think the refs knew that they missed it. So yeah, congrats to Troy. Like that's a good football team, man. Look forward to see where they go bowling.
It was funny because I had to go do the SEC post game show, and it was like Aguilar had just scored to make it 35-23, and I mean the game was over at that point still. And then I get off, do the segment, I look at the final score, and it was 49-23. And I was like, what the hell happened in the final 3 minutes? But
yeah, like I had over 28.5, and I was sweating over 28.5 in the 4th quarter, or maybe late 3rd.
Yeah, you take out the first 3 quarters, Troy still wins this game 28-23.
This is true.
So I was a little bit disappointed with oh gosh, I hate the way this sounds already. I was a little bit disappointed with the media industry today. Leaking the Willie Fritz news during warmups.
That's twice they've done that this year, by the way.
Oh man.
They did that right before the Civil War. to Jonathan Smith?
I don't know. I mean, we're literally, this is an instant reaction podcast. I have not gotten a chance to reach out to anybody who's close to that program to get a sense of whether or not Willie Fritz had a conversation with his team. It's very possible that he sat down with his team, because the word that we had picked up is that Willie was telling other schools, I'm not going to be talking to anybody till after the championship game. And maybe he had told his team that. And the Jonathan Smith, you mentioned the Civil War, the Jonathan Smith story was him in the press being like, yeah, I hope my agent is taking calls. That's what I pay him for. Like, maybe Willie Fritz told his team, like, you know what? Yes, my agent is probably talking to people right now, but I'm not talking to anybody until after Saturday because I'm invested in you and this game. And maybe it's all good. But if it's not the case, then that means they went out to stretch and go through warm-ups, and they came back in, and their phone is blowing up with their friends and their parents and everybody saying, Coach is gone. He is reportedly and seemingly on his way to go be the next head coach at Houston. And I couldn't help but think that was hanging over a subpar performance for Tulane, whereas Tom pointed out they just couldn't convert a third down. Looked a little bit sluggish, looked a little bit out of sorts, had one good drive early and then just kind of got outplayed the rest of the way. I mean, Tom, am I being unfair or too dramatic by connecting those dots?
I don't think that it's unfair. I don't know if it had that much of an impact, because I think, first of all, like, Tulane forced 3 turnovers in the first half of this game and then did nothing with them. And I think that maybe the news of Fritz leaving could have been deflating, but I would bet that was far more deflating than anything, because Tulane's offense against this SMU defense, really, they scored right off the bat because of like a crazy play turnover that will set them up with a short field. They go up 7-0. But after that, like, SMU didn't give them an inch. Like, it was a very, very strong performance from the Mustangs defense. And because I remember I was on HQ in the pregame talking about it. I was like, SMU's defense has been great all year, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. But they haven't faced an offense like this Tulane, and they haven't faced a quarterback like Michael Pratt. And SMU was like, yeah, we haven't. It doesn't matter. We're going to shut them down anyway, because that's what they did. And I think SMU deserves a lot of credit for that, because they overcame their freshman quarterback making a lot of mistakes early in the game before he was able to truly settle in and get the offense rolling. And I think I can't rule out Willie Fritz having an impact here, but I think SMU won this game more than Tulane lost it.
Agreed. I mean, like, to go out and rush for 200 something when Tulane's definitely like, hey, backup quarterback, can you throw on us? And they're like, no, guess what? We're going to run on you, despite the fact we're going to run it. That says something. Like, nice work by SMU on that. I thought SMU did an awesome job in the transfer portal. Like, to get all those defensive linemen in there who really impacted the game. They harassed Pratt all day. Like, I know Tulane's got some guys trying to play through stuff, and like, that's still a really good football team. But like, SMU just looked physically superior out there. And as they go into the ACC, they're going to be a top half team in the ACC.
Yeah.
I had them over Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech, Virginia, Cuse, Pitt, Boston College, and Wake in my ratings.
That defensive line plays like it did today. I mean, they had 7 sacks.
Yeah.
Well, they're going to be a portal team.
They had 7 sacks. It was a bunch. Wow.
I mean, so to be clear, so a few of them were on Pratt, just kind of not getting rid of the ball, but
hanging on the ball.
They were just whooping up on Tulane's offensive line most of the game.
Okay, so we got some of CUSA. Friday night.
Put Liberty at 4. Screw Texas.
I know.
I mean,
during an ad break earlier, I saw somebody was like, "Oh, you're going to keep the same energy for Liberty?" My bad, Liberty.
Hell yeah.
I was just sitting in the corner watching. I didn't pay attention to. I did not include you. My fault. Sorry about that.
712 yards.
Yep.
And I don't think New Mexico State's defense is poorly coached. We talked about this in the preview, right? We were like, look, they do a really nice job. They have played a bunch of kind of offenses down the stretch. Liberty is a different beast for this conference. And I think it's pretty rare in which we think a Jerry Kill staff is not the best staff in the league. But I think you can argue that Liberty has the best staff in the league, and they definitely have the best resources in the league. And they have a quarterback who, relative to the competition level, looks like Vince Young. Mm-hmm. So that's a problem when you got to face that. And it was like, okay, Liberty's defense is struggling. Pavia gets hurt in this game. Otherwise, it's probably a little bit closer than it was. But like New Mexico State was moving the ball on them, and Liberty's offense is like, guys, don't worry, we got this. We're going to score a touchdown on almost every drive, and yet they got stopped in the red zone a little bit. You know, like they had a turnover on downs. They missed a field goal.
Yeah.
But ultimately, they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 scoring drives for touchdowns of more than 65 yards. So that's pretty good. Like that's a nice day at the office. Congrats to Liberty. Like, should they be for the New Year's Six over SMU? I don't know. Like I personally, I have the CUSA rated really low. New Mexico State beating Auburn does change this a little bit. Oklahoma not losing their final game also helps SMU because that's one of their losses. So you have a loss to a 10-2 P5 team. However, your other loss was to TCU, which is not going bowling. I don't know. Like, I think you can have some legitimate debate here.
Yeah, like Liberty had 9 possessions, that not including the 2 at the end of the first half, and at the end of the game, 7 touchdowns, a missed field goal, and a turnover on downs. It's a pretty good day at the office for the Flames. I think that I would give them the New Year's Six spot. They didn't lose. I know their schedule is nowhere near SMU's, but I feel like you're undefeated.
We're talking about one spot. I will be shocked if the distance between SMU and Liberty is more than 2 or 3 spots.
Mm-hmm.
Also, like, I think if you're putting this together for a TV product, which the Bulls certainly are, and they like, do the Bulls get a say in this?
No, not for highest rated group of 5. Bulls,
okay, they don't. All right.
I think Bulls can have a bigger say in things that involve like Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You know, those like top 12, top 16, like some of those built-in rules for where you have to hit to be selected. I think highest rated group of 5 is still pretty much with the committee's rankings.
Well, if you're Liberty, though, would you rather be in a New Year's Six where you've got a decent chance of losing, or be in a smaller bowl game where you can win and claim a national title?
Because it would be Georgia in the Peach Bowl, I think, if my projections of this are right.
Please don't give us Georgia versus Liberty.
Wouldn't it be Alabama? Or is Alabama going to the Orange?
I don't know. Please don't give us Alabama or Georgia versus Liberty. I don't think any of us need to see that.
On the contrary, my friend, it would be hilarious.
That would be, well, for Liberty, though, I will say the CUSA, like their bowl tie-ins are so bad that if Liberty does not get the New Year's Six, they drop all the way to the Cure Bowl.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. You ready?
Yeah.
Jerry Palm is projecting Liberty in the Fiesta Bowl against the Oregon Ducks.
See, that could actually be a fun game. I expect Oregon to win by 30, but that could be a fun, decent game to watch.
Does Bo Nix play?
No, probably.
No,
he kind of dodged that question last night, didn't he? They asked him about it. He says, I haven't decided yet, which typically means he's not going to play.
Yeah, the at-large spots. Jerry Palm, currently on CBSSports.com, if you want to go and check out his bowl projections. He has Oregon and Liberty in the Fiesta Bowl, then Louisville and Alabama in the Orange, Georgia and Penn State in the Peach Bowl, and Missouri and Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl, with matchups in the playoffs of Michigan and Texas in the Sugar, and then Washington and Florida State in the Rose.
Who's he got at 1, though?
Michigan.
Okay, I think he's wrong about where they're going to play that game. But
where they're going to play, yeah. But All right. I was thinking that we had a light.
So that's
slate.
like what? Like the New Year's Six, besides the playoff games, is like 4 21-point spreads.
No, because bowl. No. Not outside the playoffs. Bowl lines are all jacked.
Yeah.
Because of opt-outs and transfer portal.
Mm-hmm.
Bowl season is the time of year where we get to lose all the money we won betting in the regular season.
You know, I was so proud of myself for, keeping the, my little rudimentary abacus going all through the season, not quitting on it, riding the rough start, having the nice little middle of the year. And I was putting everything together, and I thought to myself, I was like, I'm not going to use any of these numbers in bowl season. They're worthless. I just need to take it back and just go vibes and availability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Basically what we're going to go on.
There's so much stuff you got to track. It's really annoying. It's like, is this really worth it? Because there's like, what, 45 bowl games?
42 bowl games. And
it feels like 4 weeks worth of work to bet like less than a full, regular college ball weekend worth of games.
But we're going to be here picking every single one of them on the Cover 3 podcast. I'll tell you what, look, I mean, if anybody is going to have a better read on availability and vibes, it's like no one is going to be better than us.
This is true.
So, understand the fire that you are playing with, because we're being honest with you about it. But
hell, many shows probably won't talk about the bowls at all.
What?
Many shows probably won't talk about the bowls at all. Like, we're going to give you a lot of playoff episodes, but we will actually talk about your bowls, because only 4 fan bases are
bowls,
in the playoff.
Right?
Bowls.
You said bowls. Okay.
Yeah. Good. You thought I said polls, or you thought I said Knowles? Oh, got it. Okay, yeah. Oh man.
Anything else?
We got?
I want to talk about vibes.
All right.
How about this? We all knew Miami was going to win that game over Toledo because of the vibes.
Right.
Because Chuck Martin teams win. Chuck Martin teams overperform the expectations. Jason Campbell teams don't.
You're running the Alabama of the MAC. And you know what? The Alabama of the SEC just won the SEC. The Alabama of the MAC just lost by 9.
Didn't we call him Mario of the MAC?
We did call him Mario of the MAC.
Which is unfair because he won the title last year.
Yes.
And
against O'Rourke-less Ohio.
That's fair.
Asterisk.
He's had to play backup quarterbacks in each of the last 2 MAC championship games.
Yeah, it was.
But Braum lost to one today too. So you can be a good coach and still lose to one of those.
Avion Smith had a rough day throwing the football.
But he had 100 rushing yards.
It was clearly windy inside Ford.
Dude, it was. I'm like, if Avion Smith can hit one pass to one of these wide open guys that Miami, Ohio is scheming, this game is done, because Toledo ain't blocking a soul. And instead, and I love me some Avion Smith because I had the money line sprinkle today. And I'm really happy for him. And obviously Chuck Martin's staff does a great job. He looks like he's throwing a vase out there. I'm like, this is I thought what object is he throwing? I'm like, it looks like he's trying to throw a very large vase like across the living room. This is so non-competitive. And then they finally got one. I'm like, yes, he kept the ball in bounds. Did the receiver catch it? No, but we got a pass interference. All right, do it again. It just felt like impossible. But Miami, Ohio's defense, just how many? I don't have the box score up. They had to have 10 tackles for loss.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they were
crap out of Toledo's quarterback. They blocked 3 field goals.
And the blocked field goals was bananas. And then even on one of those blocked field goals, Toledo recovered it and got a first down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was like, okay, this is how we lose this today. This is great.
Great performance by the Red Hawks.
That was that was a MAC game to the very end. It was just wonderful.
What a deep we talk about like certain offensive coaches figuring out stuff, and like they're like, okay, we know your coverage rules, we're going to bust them. I don't know what Miami, Ohio does, but like they bust your protections. They're getting free runners like untouched. And we watch a lot of MAC because it's on CBS Sports Network sometimes. Like, guys, they're not touched. It's a thing of beauty.
Mm-hmm. It's like I've never seen an A gap so wide open.
God, yeah, they open that thing up.
I think I'm cleared out.
Boise?
I honestly, I didn't get till I got a lot on, Tulane SMU, we had it was at the same time as App State Troy. Obviously we had everything that is Alabama FSU, not Alabama FSU, Alabama, Georgia. I was on camera at the top of every hour doing like 15 minutes of reaction and updates. So that, unfortunately, that one with that 3 p.m. Eastern time start kind of fell in a little bit of a dead zone for me. So I was happy to cash the over, but and it was very quick. I very quickly saw that my handicap on the game was probably going to cash on them not being able to stop Boise's offense. Mm-hmm. So congrats to the Broncos. I mean, I guess we got to give them the job now, right?
They were calling for it after the game. The players were. There was it was Boise just kind of jumped out real quick, and UNLV never really had it. I mean, they hung around in the first half. They battled back, made it, it was 31-17. You thought, okay.
I did not see Taylon Green throwing for as many yards as he did in this game.
Yeah. No, that Boise played well. I mean, he averaged 15 yards an attempt. But like, once the second half started, like you thought, okay, you could entertain the idea that UNLV could work its way back into this game, but Boise just kind of snatched that right away in the second half. But you're right, the way they scheduled this game was poor planning, in my opinion, because it was really in like having the game start at the end of the early games and then having it kind of come to a conclusion during the start of the SEC championship. I'm not sure what the thought process was there, but I guess you can also argue, what time are you going to start it where it wouldn't have been in that kind of circle?
Yeah, I mean, I looked up and it was on a screen and I was like, awesome uniform matchup. And it was, the blues for Boise and the reds for UNLV, but I saw a bunch of scores. I didn't get a chance to really dive into the game.
Mm-hmm. And Jaden Mava did not play well. Taylon Green did. Ashton Genty was Ashton Genty. And just Boise, shout out firing your coach, I guess, is the new hotness for winning your conference.
What a weird year in the Mountain West.
Yes.
Yeah. Like at varying points of the year, I thought that Air Force was the best team. Early on, early on, I thought maybe Wyoming was the best team. They were certainly, at least in my ratings, times when Fresno was looking like the best team in the league. UNLV eventually,
San Jose State.
Yes, like I don't really think that UNLV, Boise, San Jose would have been a better game to me.
Based on form at the end of the year.
Yes.
UNLV, to my again, I'm telling you, I didn't watch today, but I watched a lot of UNLV this season. I did not think UNLV was playing its best football in the last 2-3 games of the season.
Mm-hmm. But the games that they won in like week 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, they do count.
Well, they beat Fresno. Remember, like that was a big one.
That was when I really started believing in my ticket. It's like, got that one out the way. They might do this.
But yeah.
Did you hedge it?
Yeah. Yeah. Shout out, by the way, Oklahoma State. Thanks for giving me absolutely no shot in hell of hedging that ticket today. You just made sure that game was over quick.
All right, so that's all of them, right?
Unless they created a new conference they told us about.
No, we're killing off conferences, Tom. We're not building new ones.
Well, I mean, the chat does think the SEC is going to secede if things go as the current Vegas odds are as we go to bed.
Well, then who will the SEC brag about beating if they can only play themselves?
No more non-conference games.
All right. So, listen, we've been going for an hour and 39 minutes. It's 1:30 a.m. Eastern time. I thought about saving this, but maybe this is a more appropriate time for it because we'll have more important things tomorrow. I'm not telling an Alabama fan, like, eat your dessert and like it. That's a hell of a season. The way the Auburn game ended, the way the Georgia game ended, and I think back to something that Tom's talked about growing up as a Big Ten fan. And as the Big Ten has expanded, Tom has shared that winning the Big Ten is the goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that, like, those things mean more. And if you are an Alabama fan, and look, Alabama might make the playoff, and maybe it's Florida State fans that you're having to talk to on Sunday. But if you are an Alabama fan, it is not a disappointing season if the College Football Playoff Selection Committee slots you 5th. Because what you did to Auburn in their house after all those years of pain in their house, and what you just did to Georgia to maintain your unbeaten mark against the Dogs in the SEC championship game, telling those pups who's who and what's what. It's a good season.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not telling you just be happy with it, but I'm just saying, like, you did a lot of the things that mean the most to most Alabama fans.
I don't know if he's been doing it tonight. I know he will be this weekend. But if we're pulling out some DK receipts, I do remember somebody saying that Alabama's dynasty was dead in week 2 when they lost to Texas. No, here Alabama is winning the SEC and beating Georgia. Just DK receipts, Danny. DK receipts.
Hashtag DK receipts. Good. Strong finish.
We hit 40,000. I have something in my eye. Chad's noticing it. Yeah. We hit 40,000 subs on YouTube.
Today?
Yeah, like during the show, Jordan just said.
Oh, thank you.
In the private chat. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah. And if you're watching this and you haven't, go ahead and smash it. If you're watching this later, smash it. You listen to this, go to youtube.com/cover3, smash it. We will be back soon in less than 12 hours. 12:15 p.m. Eastern time. We'll be back reacting to the college football playoff semifinal announcements. We appreciate everybody hanging out. Please come join us then. And you can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fernelli. You can follow him at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
See ya.